housing conditions is housing. And I just call it the housing challenge. And there are three basic conditions to it. First of all, a young person has to be working at least part-time. If they're not working part-time, then they're going to have to go into, one of the better shelters like Covenant House or Roots and Wings, something like that. But they're going to have a shelter. If they're working part-time, they're probably bringing home about $600 a month. That's their take-home. And our quest is to find how a person can actually live on $600 a month. That's $7,200 a year. It's below the federal poverty level to do that. But it is possible to live on that money, at least to get yourself going. Okay, but there's two other caveats. Number two is effective housing has to have proximity to their job, because these young people don't have driver's licenses. They don't have the money for a car or the insurance and all that stuff. So they need to have three options to get to work. The housing that they get has to either be in walking distance, bicycle distance, or public transportation. They have to have those three ways that are functional every single day that they can get to work before they have to like rely on a friend or spend, their minimum wage income on an Uber to get to work. So that's very important, is proximity to their employment. And finally, no one can live today without access to an internet connection and a washer and dryer and kitchen privileges. This is something that they need too. We send them to life skills programs and we teach them how to cook. Well, that's not going to do them any good if all they have when they age out of foster care is a microwave, which can be effective, but still not good enough. There's a wonderful organization in Trenton that provides computers called TDI. And Medicaid will provide a smartphone. That's an Obama phone, so that's covered. They have Medicaid till they're 26, but they need internet access. And don't say there's internet at the library, because that's just not good enough. Young people are awake at 1, 2 in the morning. They're not just doing library hours. In fact, they probably work during the library time. So that's what they need. Anyway, at the end of the show, in my final words tonight, I will tell you about an idea that's so crazy it just might work. So hit that share button on Facebook and stay right where you are. We're going to take a short break, but we're just getting started. We'll be back in 1 minute with Denise Holkeen and Carol Burden. So don't go away. My guests are Denise Holkeen from Trenton Board of Education and Carol Burden from Trenton Music Makers. Denise, let me start with you, just because I think you have like the hardest job in the world. You're wearing two hats with the Trenton Board of Education. You are the parent liaison, and you are the interim homeless liaison as well. So let's talk about those sort of one at a time, okay? Starting with the parent liaison. I would venture to guess that most of the people who are listening to this show, if they are living in a suburban environment, have a view of a person in your position trying to create a liaison situation with parents and having a very rough time of it. First of all, when did you start doing this?
This role became available in August of this past year.
So this is new.
Yeah, it's pretty new. The parent coordinator, so I oversee all of the parent liaisons that are at each school building. So right now, there are 13 positions pretty much tailored to engage parents into the school system. So they provide various opportunities for parents to be involved in the school, whether it's a workshop or getting involved in the PTO. They're providing tools and resources for families. So my role is integral because I'm providing different resources and training opportunities for parents to share with parents. So whether that's bringing in various nonprofit organizations to share some of the things that our parents need in the school systems so that they have plenty of resources in order to continue to keep their children engaged in school and so that they can stay abreast with all of the new, educational curriculums and components and things that may be hard for parents to understand. So we provide, various tools and resources for families to get engaged in the school system.
Absolutely. A side note, I was thinking I want to bring a Nurtured Heart seminar, whatever you want to call it. Have you done any of that with the parents? Maybe we could combine.
Yeah, sounds like an interesting opportunity. We're definitely always looking for out of the box ways to keep our parents engaged.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So you supervise 13 parents in 13 different schools in the Trenton school system.
Yeah,
right?
so parent liaisons are paid district positions
Okay.
within the school system.
And it's all grade levels then.
Not
Yes?
all grade levels.
Okay.
They're in elementary schools and middle schools.
And you were the spearhead, weren't you, behind the recent program whose overall goal started out to be to deal with chronic absenteeism.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. The school district received a grant from Princeton Area Community Foundation to specifically reduce chronic absenteeism. So over the course of the next 5 years, the school district will receive $300,000. So we're taking a multi-prong approach to pretty much tackle some of the barriers of chronic absenteeism. So we're looking at systems, policies, how can we make those things better so that we're doing better, streamlining our outreach strategies to allow parents to understand, number one, what is chronic absenteeism? How does it affect your child? And so that they can maximize the learning that's happening in the classroom. We're also looking at how can we bring in community resources? How can we provide a area where parents can feel safe and come to schools to gain access. So this is a grant that was received this school year. So we're in the process of working with a marketing firm so that we can strengthen our approach with communication strategy. So that part really just started right now. And then we launched an attendance campaign in February at PJ Hill Elementary School. And we wanted to find a fun, friendly activity for families to come and become more aware of why attendance is so important and how the Trenton Public Schools cares about children. So it started off as, well, weather is an impact for chronic absenteeism.
Weather, right.
So how cool would it be if we just start collecting all these umbrellas and snow boots and rain gear? And then we were working with County Capital Children's Collaborative, and they mentioned that they wanted to do a collection of umbrellas, and I'm like, all right, cool, well, let's have a rainbow drive. So then it started to, as we began to brainstorm and plan, it began to grow because we wanted families to also be able to access information and resources and service information from various nonprofits, whether it's homeless services, Planned Parenthood was there, Anchor House was there. We had Henry J. Austin providing immunizations. We had a clinic there providing wellness checks. We had the City of Trenton providing lead testing.
Lead screening,
so we were just we had a laundry list of
Absolutely.
all the barriers.
It was really, people told me it was really, we had Age Out Angels had a booth there,
Yes,
but I was away
yes.
and I couldn't be there.
Yeah.
But people told me it was really hot. I mean, to start something like this in August and come right out of the box, first of all, you started in August and came right out of the box with the Back to School festival, which was pretty amazing, right? And then I just want to make sure people who are listening to this don't get the impression that you're supervising 13 parent liaisons and you're sitting in an office on high pushing a pencil around, because you're getting right down into the trenches and coming up with creative ideas.
Yeah, because it's important that we begin linking our communities to our schools. And the way I've been trying to do that is just strengthening relationships by participating in various committees, attending, making meetings with DCPNP and Homefront, and making those community linkages for the schools to make it easier for parents to access things that they need, so
Right.
that we can start knocking down some of those barriers
Yeah.
of chronic
And
absenteeism.
for those of you who don't know, the places that Denise just mentioned are just are places where there are at-risk youth. Homefront, of course, DCP&P, which is the foster care system, essentially. I mean, that's where the at-risk youth are. Yeah, you wouldn't expect. I would expect you actually to have your head in the clouds, because you should all know Denise just got married, huh? Come on, let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you.
But she came back from honeymoon and got right back into the game.
Yeah,
Wow.
because now we're planning an Everyday Matters parent conference that's going to happen on Saturday, May 18th, at MLK Elementary School. So I have gathered a committee together, and we have locked in a keynote speaker, Dr. Youngblood, and what we want to do is provide various workshops that tie. It's a Spring into Health conference, and we want to connect how does health impact student attendance, and the City of Trenton is on board, the Department of, Human and Environmental Services. I apologize if I messed up the titling. But yeah, so they're on board, and we want to provide parents the opportunity for a different setting for educational learning. And so we're in the process of getting all of those workshops locked in.
Absolutely.
And we did a small survey for parents to rate, what is it that they would like to learn about. And we're even entertaining doing yoga and meditation and mindfulness and, healthy eating, healthy lifestyles. So it's going to be an array of workshops available for parents to select from.
Yeah, it's a tall order to sort of stigmatized stress. It just people who live in difficult environments just don't have time to deal with the stress that their kids might be feeling and stuff. So I mean, it's hard to take that stigma out of that, and so you're basically sort of changing thinking. And also, in the regular media, you'll hear that we've gotten rid of 90% of the lead in the country, and so everybody goes, "Oh, problem solved," right? Well, guess where the other 10% is, right? It's in the urban environment. That's where it is. We had people from Isles on who explained that there are something like 15 cities in New Jersey who have more lead in their water than Flint, Michigan does. So, I mean, these are real problems that create cognition, developmental disabilities in children, and it goes on and on. But we'll get back to you in just a moment, because I want to say hi to Carol Burden, who is the breath of fresh air in a highly substantive conversation here. So a few years ago, I was watching 60 Minutes.
Okay.
All right, and I saw this wonderful piece about I don't know. I guess it was
Gustavo Dudamel,
a
probably.
guy, right? Was it Venezuela or Brazil? Where?
The piece may have been on Jose Antonio Abreu, who was the Venezuelan father of El Sistema.
Okay.
The full title of that, I'm going to attempt. It is the El Sistema de Orquestas y Coros Juveniles y Infantiles. In
English?
the system of orchestras and choruses for children. It is a national system in Venezuela, and many of us, Trenton music makers included, have been inspired by El Sistema and have sought to replicate it in a way that is appropriate to American culture.
Right,
so
right.
we
All
are
right.
considered El Sistema inspired.
So if you didn't see the 60 Minutes piece, I mean, basically what he seemed to be doing was going into neighborhoods that were tremendously impoverished.
Yes.
I mean, just people living in a third world style you might imagine, with tin huts or cardboard shacks and things like that, and encouraging young people to take up musical instruments, and to the point where they created
Yes.
an orchestra.
Well, more than encouraging, really was removing barriers and was bringing resources to make it possible. Abreu was famous for having said, if you give a child living in poverty a musical instrument, they are no longer poor. Now that greatly oversimplifies
Sure.
everything that goes into becoming a musician, and yet we've put all of our resources into intensive skill building activity. Now there are plenty of examples here in the city of Trenton, ways that in and of itself has been really effective. There are other
Right.
organizations that are teaching other skills in an intensive fashion, but
Well,
ours is orchestra.
it's interesting, and I want to get back to that in just a second. But first, I want you to give us a little bit of history background on this. So, when did Trenton Music Makers start, and where did it come from? Like, what was the impetus that made whoever did it do it here?
Sure. Well, we were actually founded 20 years ago as Trenton Community Music School, and that is the history of the organization. We started off as a traditional community music school, providing piano, violin, flute, voice, drums,
So lessons.
private lessons
Yeah.
to on an affordable basis for people living in Trenton. About 4 years ago, our board really took stock of where our greatest successes were, and they seemed to be in the ensemble field, and where we were bringing people together into groups to make music together. That was really where we were seeing the greatest impact. Partly in terms of retention, people staying with us and really building some skills, because becoming a musician is not something that happens overnight. Again, it's not just because you were given an instrument.
Right.
And also, they were seeing really the immediate effects. A year after Trenton Community Music School was founded, we began our early childhood program, which is called Music for the Very Young. This year, we are engaging 560 preschoolers and their families in the Trenton Public Schools, in the public preschools. We have a music, teacher training, and family engagement program, which has been going since the year 2000. And it was largely through our preschool program and also through, say, guitar class. There was a brief time that we had a string orchestra, drumming circles, things like this, that our board and the leadership of the organization was saying, hang on, get people together in groups, and right there, you've got positive society right away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that we're trying to do. We describe ourselves as a musical and social development organization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So playing together as an orchestra is a great example of positive culture for kids.
Absolutely true. And if you think about it, that aspect of it, that team building skills and things like that, organizations like Trenton Music Makers, or for that matter, like the Circus Squad,
Exactly.
Are coming from that same point of depth,
Yes,
right? Where it's not just about what you see on the surface.
right.
There's way more to it.
Circus Squad is a great example of an organization that is quite similar to us, as a matter of fact.
In
We have very
intent, yeah.
similar goals.
Yeah.
We have a different path for getting there.
Absolutely.
And the right kid for Trenton Music Makers might not be the right kid for Circus Squad, and vice versa. But we're working in the same direction.
But both of those kids get a chance to participate in
Most
something
definitely.
that is of team building nature.
And hopefully, part of what they're learning is to appreciate one another, because we ask kids in our program to understand how much there is to be learned from someone in the room who thinks differently from you.
Mm-hmm.
You make harmony not because someone's making the same sound that you are, but
Right.
because your sounds work well together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we encourage them to find ways that that's happening in their broader lives as well.
So how old are the children who perform?
We started off with just third graders. Now we have kids in the second grade through high
no.
school.
Through high school.
Through high school.
So in the performance part of this, you have second, third graders.
Our second
Doing
and third
ensemble
graders have just started to
performance?
perform with the big kids.
Oh,
Yes, they
no.
have.
That's incredible.
And one of the traditions in El Sistema is that there are multiple violin 1 parts, multiple violin 2 parts.
Uh-huh.
And some of them are just for kids playing open strings. Gustavo Dudamel
Oh,
tells the
neat.
story of when
Yeah.
he was first given an instrument in Venezuela. Dudamel, by the way, a lot of people know, is the music director of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, grew up in Venezuela himself, and he's well known locally. He's in residence at Princeton University this
Okay.
year. So Dudamel himself tells the story of picking up an instrument for the first time. He first tried playing trumpet, and it was too hard, and he looked around, and all his best friends were playing violin, and so he decided to play violin. This is one of the most successful musicians in the world, and he
Right.
tells that very no-nonsense story of how he chose his instrument. But he says that a couple weeks later, he was performing as a part of an orchestra of 250 kids.
Yeah.
And he was sitting in the back, And he was playing open strings.
Sure.
But there was this extraordinary sound happening around him, and he knew he was part of it. This is what we want for our kids, to see that there's something very, very beautiful happening around them and that their role is very important.
Yeah, yeah, and it takes the whole group, though.
It does.
You know, is greater than the individual
Right.
parts.
You work
when the
hard
whole
so that
comes
everybody
together.
sounds good together.
Yeah. So I don't know, it was about maybe 20, 25 years ago or so. I loaned my student flute to a friend's daughter, right? And so then about 2 years later, he said to me, it's her 8th grade, band concert. Do you want to come? And so I did. And other parents in the audience, didn't know who I was, so they were like, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm here to see my friend's daughter." And they said, "Wow, you are so brave." Because tuning an 8th grade orchestra, getting everyone to play together, and I mean, that's a challenge. That's a serious challenge.
I was just
So-
talking to our artistic director today saying, how soon can you teach kids to tune their own instruments? Because our teaching artists spend a long time tuning everybody's violin, viola, cello, bass before they play.
Absolutely. I mean, you could do the whole first 45 minutes
Yes, you can.
tuning and then have intermission, and then come back and play some more. So what's it like? First of all, when they play, are they in small ensembles or whole orchestra, or orchestra then break down into ensembles and then the orchestra? How does it work? Like
Orchestra is
in
really
performance.
at the core of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We really believe in getting kids to play all together as much as possible. This year we are on site in 4 different schools in Trenton, so the kids are mostly with the kids at their school site, and we make a point of bringing them all together to perform as often as possible.
How do they get into Trenton Music Makers? What's the way in?
They self-identify. We also have teachers in each school who have a finger on the pulse and have a sense of which of the kids they probably ought to pull aside and say, hey, you should consider this. We have appeared at back-to-school nights and spoken. We've been to the extravaganza and have met a bunch of families and have talked about what we're offering. We provide all the resources that we're able to provide. The kids need to commit 6 to 8 hours a week, and we tell them at that point they're full scholarship students if they can be with us and make that commitment and come out and perform with us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting. Well, I never did get that flute back.
That's a good thing, isn't
That's
it?
exactly. As long as she's clinging to it, now that she's in her 30s, I
Hopefully
think.
playing it now and then,
playing it.
too.
Right. So how do first of all, how do the children who get into Music Makers select which instrument they're going to play, and then how do they acquire that instrument?
We lend them an instrument for the year. We have a full collection of instruments.
Wow.
There are a little over 100 kids who have been in our program this year. We have almost 200 instruments, so we have some choices.
Goodness gracious.
All string instruments and in various sizes, so hopefully we can accommodate every kid. There are some very, very generous people in this community. We've had 2 musical instrument drives in partnership with Princeton University, with WWFM, and with other partners.
Is it
And
mostly strings?
it is entirely strings.
Oh, okay.
We are a string orchestra program: violin, viola, cello, bass.
So my replacement flute is safe then, is
That it is.
basically
We will
what
not
you're
come and get
saying
that
here.
flute from you. No, we won't.
Fair enough.
And
does
I
it-
have
and
to
you-
give a shout out also to Russo
ahead.
Music, which has been extremely, here in Hamilton, has been extremely generous, has donated a lot of instruments. As I said, we have about 200 instruments in our store of instruments, and we have not yet had to buy one. We've had some very
Wonderful.
generous people supplying them to us. So we assign one to the kid for the year.
Now, does a new class come in every September, or is it
Yes.
sort of revolving? Like,
No, the kids do a lot of work together, and
Yeah.
it's difficult to jump in right in the middle. So there's a new class in September. This year, we brought in some new beginners at the beginning of February. We did the same thing last year, so we may turn that into an annual event. As we see how things all
Wonderful.
shake out, sometimes there's room to bring in some new beginners.
Wonderful. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, more with Denise Holkeen and Carol Burden. Please hit that share button. There's still time to do it. Don't go away. And we are back. Before we go further, I do need to thank all the people who made donations to Age Out Angels this week. We thank you so very much for your generosity. And I presume people made donations to Trenton Music Makers as well this week, and you thank them
We
too,
do.
right? Yes,
We
it's,
do.
it's what makes our little worlds go round, isn't it? By the way, if you have an employee giving fund or matching gifts foundation associated with your place of work, we would certainly appreciate your contacting us and telling us how we can participate in that. Private message me on Facebook or email to greg@ageoutangels.org. And I want to remind everyone that you can donate to Age Out Angels every time you make a purchase from Amazon. All you have to do is designate Age Out Angels to be your Amazon Smile designee, and a portion of your payment will go to Age Out Angels without it costing you 1 penny more. I can make it easy for you to designate Age Out Angels as your Amazon Smile recipient. All you have to do is contact me either via Facebook or greg@ageoutangels.org, and I'll send you a link that will take you directly to our designation and save you a whole bunch of clicks and confusion. Also, want to give a big shout out to the wonderful people at William Patterson University. I had the distinct pleasure of visiting there last Thursday. Met a young lady who will be graduating college and aging out of foster care at the very same time. And we're working on a program to raise the funds so that people in her situation can have proper housing until they can get on their feet. In her case, she needs to go to graduate school. So what we want to do is allow her to do that, not put her in a position where she's, homeless and trying to get through a graduate school education. But at the same time, there are more people in colleges and universities who are going to age out of foster care at like the worst possible time. Like if you think about it, a person who is in foster care usually doesn't graduate high school on time. Like at the age of 17 or 18, they're still in high school. So they might graduate at 19 or even 20. And so when they're 21, that sort of puts them in the middle of freshman year or sophomore year at college when they age out. And then summer hits and they age out into homelessness. And their odds of making it back for the next semester are ridiculously low. But these are people who are already in college. They have like incredibly good upside potential if we could just help them finish. So that's something that we're working on right now with several universities, and William Patterson has been the most receptive to our overtures to this point, and we thank them so very, 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 very much. Speaking of homelessness, Denise, you are the interim homeless liaison. So tell people what that means exactly. How many I could ask the question for the next 15 minutes.
Yeah. So what that means is I'm more so a connector. So I help to identify families that are homeless and I connect them with services. So far this year, I've tracked about 320 kids that I know of.
Who are going to school.
That are going to school, yeah. And what I do is I team up with organizations such as Homefront, Women's Space, to let them know that, hey, now they fall under McKinney-Vento Act, which protects them so that if, let's say, Susie is now temporarily living and sleeping on the couch of a cousin's house, she can still remain in Trenton Public Schools. So what I'll do is I'll help to set up transportation services. There are I do an assessment with a family to see how we can support the family as best as possible to ensure that their educational needs are being met. There are sub-grants available through McKinney-Vento that's available through the county that I can access. So if a family needs tutoring services or school uniforms, that's a request that I can make to the county in order to best provide additional services for that family. So the best way to describe it is that I'm really working to meet with the family, help them make them feel more comfortable, because it's not a comfortable conversation to have when a
Absolutely.
family, sometimes they don't identify as being homeless. It's
Yes.
a tough situation. I mean, it's easy if there's a natural disaster, there's a house fire. It's easier for them to say, I'm
Now I'm
temporarily
homeless.
homeless.
Right.
Yeah. However, if they're, evicted, it's a harder conversation to have because there's just that
It's
level of
humiliating.
judgment,
Yeah.
that happens. So what I do is I try to make the families feel safe and comfortable and let them know that I'm just extending help and services so that, we can ensure that the children are not missing school.
Right. It's
Because that's
all
what
about
happens.
chronic absenteeism. Right.
Exactly. So the more we educate ourselves, and because there was a huge learning curve for myself, you know, I doubled up is the term that's used when a family does not have sufficient or adequate space for living. So if, yes, they are in a home, they're still considered homeless.
Right, right. I was going to
Yeah.
go there, yeah,
Yeah.
because there's what people think of as homeless, and then there's the actual definition of what homeless is. And so, if a young person is couch surfing,
Yes.
they are essentially homeless.
Yes.
They're by
Yes.
definition.
Yes. And then we have our unaccompanied youth. So
Yeah.
some teenagers, they're not, in the custody of their family.
Yeah, yeah.
So now they're still homeless.
Right.
They're an unaccompanied youth.
And they don't necessarily want to be identified.
Exactly.
Not only because it's humiliating, but they don't want to end up in the system.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's another misconception that if I share with the school system that I'm homeless right now, then they're going to take my children away. But that's
Right.
not the goal of DCPNP. So educating families that that's not a form of abuse or neglect. That is life circumstance that happen. So that's not the goal for the school to identify you and then have your children removed. We want to keep your family together. We want to be able to provide linkages and resources. And Homefront has been an awesome partner. They provide
Yeah.
me a monthly list of like housing availabilities. I reach out to Catholic Charities. I mean, there's so many organizations that I never knew offered various programs such as support with first month's rent or security. So just helping that family, becoming that conduit for them, because sometimes it's easier when there's a school representative calling agencies, on a family's behalf, and then passing the baton, and then prepping them and coaching them. Okay, well, you should ask this question, and I have a list of things that the family can kind of check off once they leave my office.
Excellent. And I'm just thinking of it personally because we're working with a young lady whose family is in imminent danger of becoming homeless. And we're trying to figure out how we can get them housing and have her finish high school. She's a senior in high school, coming up
Yeah.
to the last 2 months of
Yeah.
high school, and the bank wants to take the house back, So we're like, oh no, she can't just get a house any old where, right, to live. And the part that drives me nuts about housing and why we talk about it so much on this program is that for all the programs that there are, HUD, Section 8, all of the different, no matter what we do, it seems like we somehow manage to be not eligible
That happens.
for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear this all the time. I get, well, here's a person who needs housing. Well, they're not eligible. They're not employed. Oh, okay. Well, here's one who's employed. Well, now he makes too much money. But if
Yeah.
she had a drug habit or a child, then we could help her. Well, here's one with a child. No, sorry.
Yeah. Well, Mercer County Board of Social Services is usually my first go-to. And then I let the families know, listen, go, let them give you a denial letter, request that. So a family wouldn't know to request that denial letters because
Right.
there are organizations that have funding. Sometimes it is limited, but it's just about making that connection so that the
Yeah.
families can identify, okay, well, Mercer County Board of Social Services can't help me, but Homefront can help me, or Catholic Charities can help me. There's various churches that could possibly help me in my situation. So just kind of helping to navigate the systems, and it does get challenging, especially when they don't meet certain qualifications, but it's almost going through like a whole slew
Yeah.
of processes just so that the family can receive support. There's the homeless hotline, but there's always a caveat. They'll only provide housing for one day for that 1 year, or if it's on a Friday, they'll provide shelter just for the
Right.
weekend, so
Right.
there's always a catch
Yeah, yeah.
22.
Well, what's driving this family, just adding to the stress factor, because they lived in the same house for about 20 years or so. And so now they're thinking, if we become homeless or end up in Homefront or something like that, what will happen to all of our stuff? This is, what a
Yeah,
house looks
you'd have
like
to
after 20
probably
years,
put it in
right?
storage. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And who pays for that?
Probably the family,
Yeah.
and sometimes they have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
But what's nice is Homefront has, operates on like 4 different pillars. They have not only their shelters, they have transitional housing.
Right.
They have their own furniture store, clothing, store.
So-
So they help a lot.
If you're living in a place like Homefront that offers residential, that's what it does. Are you considered homeless?
Yeah,
Because that's not a permanent
yeah, it's temporary.
dwelling kind of situation. So you are
Yeah.
under the.
Yeah, and then they provide job skills and trainings and
So today I heard about, what was it called? The C system or something?
the C Center.
C Center,
C
right.
Center.
You call the C Center, and then the C Center is supposed to do an intake and then
Yeah.
know how to direct
I think
you.
those are for probably unaccompanied youth or singles, because I did attempt to try to call for a family, and
Yeah.
they have a specific, population that they work with as well. But they
Uh-huh.
do pretty much kind of what I'm doing for the families, as an organization. But they're, I think their population is a little bit more limited. They don't help the whole family. They just help, adults in certain situations.
Now you are interim. You
Yeah.
have the title of interim. So does that mean you're not going to be doing this forever, or?
That's a great question.
Or,
I wish I
Or
knew.
does it mean they get to pay you half?
I have no idea.
Uh-huh.
I'll keep taking each day as it comes
Yeah.
and continue to serve to the best of my ability.
Oh, you're working so hard. You're working so hard, and it's so nice to see somebody, who's putting that kind of time and effort and everything into it. Carol, you see what I mean about you're the breath of fresh air in this show tonight? So what's going on at Trenton Music Makers? Where, how can we see these young people? Because I'll bet your best marketing is a show.
It is. Our kids really speak and play for themselves. They
Yeah.
tell their own story
So
very well.
where do they do it? Like where do you gig?
It's kind of a fun time in the year, because really we try not to start off with too much. We really want to see
Right.
where everybody is, make sure that everybody feels comfortable in their studio setting, and that the word we use is borrowed from Venezuela. We really want to build a nucleo everywhere that we are. So we take plenty of time to do that and make sure everybody's really comfortable with how they're moving forward. And then starting in about January is when we start performing. So this year, I'm going to make a liar of myself. We started a little early because we had an opportunity to play a benefit concert for people affected by Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. A lot of the children in our program have family in Puerto Rico, family and friends who are seeing firsthand the difficulty to rebuild. And this
Yeah.
was something the kids really wanted to do. We had everything in place for a concert very soon after the hurricane, and we
Wow.
had to cancel that at the last minute. So for the year anniversary of what would have been that concert, we gave it this year.
Excellent.
And that was the first performance of the year.
You may have given them more money than FEMA. So when was that, and where was it?
That was in December, and that was at Trinity Cathedral. So the cathedral was very kind and generous to open their doors,
Yeah,
and we had
yeah.
a big crowd of Trentonians who were happy to help us raise money to support people in Puerto Rico who are still working to rebuild, particularly in the central areas of the country where there are many places where there is still no electricity, where basic services are very difficult
Sure.
to come by. The roads are still impassable.
Sure. I wonder if any of the children actually had relatives and stuff. who
Yes, they
were-
do.
Yeah,
And that is why,
were down
that's
there.
why it was so resonant for them,
Very
really.
appropriate.
Yep.
Sure.
A lot of family, a lot of friends. In
So
Puerto
that was
Rico.
December, you said, right?
That was December.
Okay, so what's happening now? You had a concert. I think I was away. Just like I missed the festival that Denise had at the Trenton schools, and I was away. But what's
Maybe it was
what's
Martin
coming
Luther
up?
King Day. That was our next
was away,
concert.
yeah.
It was in a hall at the College of New Jersey at Mayo Hall. So this is somewhat of a tradition for El Sistema programs in the United States, is to celebrate Martin Luther King Day.
Okay.
So we did give a concert. That was the debut of our second and third graders who got to play with the big kids for the first time. Had a very large concert on a very cold day.
Wow.
Yeah, we gave our annual benefit just 3 weeks ago. A number of our kids played at Springdale Golf Club for some of our friends who came to help us raise some money for the organization. That was
So
a big
when you do a
plus.
big concert, how many pieces are on stage?
It varies.
Uh huh.
Excuse me. We may have the whole orchestra. We may have between 80 and 105 kids.
Whoa.
Often we have fewer. When we played at Springdale, we didn't have space for that many, so we had 40 of our kids who came to play. And their teachers usually sit in the section and play with them also, give a little extra
Yeah.
strength. We have something very exciting coming up in another few weeks. As a part of Gustavo Duramel's residency at Princeton University, we are hosting a seminario, which is, we're borrowing a lot of Venezuelan terms.
Yes,
As
we
you can
are.
tell, my Spanish is very bad.
But your accent
But,
is lovely.
Thank you. We are hosting a youth orchestra festival, which will be a full day on the campus of Princeton University. We have 300 kids
Wow.
in Sistema-inspired programs, Long Island, New York City, throughout the state of New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, at Philadelphia, and also in Baltimore. In
Wonderful.
New Jersey, we have an alliance of El Sistema-inspired programs that get together every year and play as a large orchestra, a mega orchestra. This time we'll have 300
Wow.
kids playing at Richardson Auditorium.
You're a
at
busy lady
Princeton.
too, aren't you? Goodness gracious. Now, if you're listening out there, no matter where you are in the country or the world for that matter, I wonder if Stefan is listening in Sweden tonight. Janine Fox says hi. Hi, Janine. Melvin Ford, Harry Manko are out there watching the show or listening to it tonight. No matter where you are in the country or the world, this is Trenton Music Makers is an organization that you should definitely contribute to. So would you want to tell people how they can do that?
Absolutely. If you'd like to learn more about us or if you'd like to get involved as a donor, as a volunteer, www.trentonmusicmakers.org.
www.trentonmusicmakers.org. And Denise, do you also do that sort of pitch for donation thing, or does your money come in a different way?
Different way. We do have a website that
The listeners just exhaled.
that families can visit, www.trentonk12.org. That's the school district's website. We do accept donations, but it's a different way to do that. You know.
Yeah, it's a different process.
A different process.
Through
Absolutely.
the Education Foundation, is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, they do have the Trenton Education Foundation.
Wonderful. Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'm going to have some final thoughts, and I will reveal the thing I teased you with in the very beginning of the show of a housing idea that's so crazy, so nuts, so ludicrous that it just might work. Don't go away. Back. We are back. Okay, so this is my idea. Try not to laugh. Because last week my idea was good. Last week my idea was doable. You guys didn't hear it, right? Last week my idea was doable. My plan, my real plan, okay, is to hit every civic organization, every Elks Lodge, Moose Lodge, Knights of the Pythias, Knights of Columbus, Lions Club, Rotary Club, every church, every synagogue, everything. Because ultimately, what I'm looking for a young person is a room. That's what I want. And if you happen to be like an empty nester, right, who has an extra room in your house, certainly widows, widowers who could just use another body in the house. You know, when I was in Florida for a long time this year, and when people are widowed, it's can be so depressing at night. You know, they go to sleep in an empty house every night, and it's almost not fair. So anyway, if I could get people to just take a child in, and we'd pay them like $200 a month, because I think kids should pay something out of that $600. It shouldn't just go to milkshakes and video games. You know, they got to learn how to budget money, and paying some in is fine. But you know, give them a room, give them kitchen privileges and a washer dryer, and access to your internet, right? And have it be in that neighborhood that's close enough to their job. Because remember, that's part of the deal, is you're trying to basically fill an inside straight there. You want them to have that proximity to their job. Okay, that was last week's idea, and that's good. That is actually possible. We've put one child in already to a situation like that, so I'm feeling really buoyed. But here's my other idea, all right? Across the country, there are malls losing their retail stores. Right? Retail is losing ground to the internet every day. And so I feel sorry for people who bought malls because now it's starting to look like a bad investment, right? So all across the country, there are malls, big malls, small malls, whole city malls, strip malls, and they're all losing ground, right? Now, each one of the stores in those malls is somewhere between like 3 and 20,000 square feet. They're big space. Right? So my plan is to take all of the empty space in malls and turn it into like micro apartments. And so that way, the people who own the malls, who would be sinking under piles of debt after a while as more and more stores move out, would have, you know, a way to replenish some of that income. And at the same time, I mean, do you know how many people we could house in those empty malls if you subdivided, you know, those stores? And think about it, like the plumbing is already there. There are all the sort of basics for living, you know, that already exist there. I'm sure it wouldn't be cheap to convert it all into apartment space and stuff like that. But there's just all this space that's just sitting there doing nothing, basically costing money and turning into disrepair. So why not just take that existing space and turn it into something that people can live in until they can move into something that's more their own? That's my plan. It's so crazy, it just might work. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another hour talking about youth who should matter more in our political and economic discourse than they do. And we thank you so much for tuning in. And maybe if you hit that share button, help us spread the word. Again, we offer humble thanks to Hamilton Radio and to my most excellent guests, Denise Holkeen from the Trenton Board of Education and Carol Burden from the Trenton Music Makers. Thanks to our engineer, Ruben. Music provided by Angel Fire. Our webmaster is Carmen Garcia Valera. Our social media specialist is Bailey Braverman. Join me next Monday, April 15th. Stressologist Carol Rickard will be here, and Tina Lamar from Sheltered Yoga. So when you join me next week, be prepared. Like, wear some loose-fitting clothing, right? Even if you're at home, just, you know, wear sweats and be prepared to relax. If you have a yoga mat, lay it out. Until then, let's make this week the best week ever. Now, don't move, because coming up right after me is Dr. Felicia Nace and her show. Now, Felicia, hi.
Hi, Greg. How are you?
It's good to see you. Now, your show is called The Argument,
It's
right?
called The Argument,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, and so here's my question, because I got some emails and comments from people.
Yes.
This is now the third week that you've been back.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So here's the thing. People want to know if your show called The Argument are you encouraging folks to call in with contrary opinions?
Absolutely.
Is that why it's The Argument?
Yes, that's why it's The Argument. So I try to get people stirred up about topics that are popular, That sometimes can be a sore spot with individuals. Like today, I'm talking about religion in schools. That's a big one with parents. You know, should there be, shouldn't there be, you know, that kind of thing. Last week it was LGBTQ. You know, we have this new mandate from our governor. He is going to roll out LGBTQ history in all of the schools in New Jersey, starting in kindergarten through 12th grade. So, you know, that has parents a little stirred up too. So, yes, I welcome people to call in and argue with me.
Go for it.
Absolutely.
If you're coming off from my show and you're feeling whatever you're feeling when Dr. Nace just says whatever she says, then you know feel free to jump in there and participate in her program.
Absolutely. And so the number to call is 609-807-2492. I want to say thank you to my wonderful colleague Greg Rapport. Thank you
And
for
thank
a
you.
wonderful show tonight, and
Yes.
to your guests. And have a great evening.
You too.
Okay.
We'll be listening.
Thank you. So, good evening to the listening audience. I am Dr. Nace, and this is The Argument, right here on